Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. Um, I've been talking to Ralph Milton Buck, An American Diplomat is what he wrote, how it happened. And this is going to be a little bit long for Calvin's usual monologue, only because it is just too important, and you folks need to know right from the outset just how important, how amazing this book is, and I call it as I see it. So Ralph had been, I guess, 33 years, give or take, a diplomat. And it all began, he was in the Foreign Service. This is just a review of what you're going to be listening to. And that's how important this monologue is. Uh, he was, I'm just looking at my notes. He started in the Foreign Service in 67 in Vietnam. And he saw reports about the Tet Offensive, and he did all of that, and schools and rice and all the stuff. He was there as a diplomat in Vietnam during the war, and then as he writes, his actions shift to Canada with the Quebec Liberation Front and Prime Minister Trudeau. And I remember all this stuff. And then, he bumped into President Nixon. I mean, powerful stuff. And then after Canada, and they kind of oversaw and they monitored the implementation of the Paris Peace Treaty that Kissinger put together. And after that, Saigon fell back in 75. Then, as he writes, the next little hotspot was Grenada, that President Reagan ordered a military operation back in 1983. And Ralph is involved and is there to see this stuff. Then, and this is powerful stuff here, because this is, by the way, forget what it is, because then in 79, he's in Tehran, and he heard rumors about the Ayatollah Khomeini coming in and trying to overthrow the Shah. Boom, boom, boom. And then he had to get out of Iran really fast and just made it out before the embassy got taken over and the hostages were taken. And uh, um, then from there was involvement with Afghanistan and the terrorists, and they murdered an American ambassador. It's just all part this, all part of that. Moving on, then he goes to Saudi Arabia and hangs out there, and stuff that was going on in Saudi Arabia. Then after Saudi Arabia, I'm going fast because then he's in communist China in 1980, and witnessing the trying to open up China to the West, which has been done. Then in Panama, and he oversaw the Panama Canal treaties. Then to Bolivia, and Bolivia, unbeknownst to me until I read, had a 24,000% inflation rate. I can't even imagine that. Um, so then from there, and also the idea of cocaine, and of course President Trump today was talking to the president of Colombia, about this whole cocaine deal. And Ralph, that's how contemporary this is, because Ralph was there. Then into Brazil. Um, Again, I never do this, but it's important. Then the Gulf War starts, and then he did stuff with the Peruvian Air Force. Then to coca fields in Colombia. This is contemporary stuff, folks. And then the Ways and Means, and then he went back to Vietnam in '96. Uh, um, I write a lot about that stuff myself, not on Ralph's level. And then Venezuela. And then he was in London when September 11th took place. As he wrote, none of the above is fiction. It's a first-hand account of what happened as seen from ground zero. So, this was a long-winded but necessary monologue to what we're going to begin to discuss. So, the monologue is done. I'm just so glad we got put together, Ralph. If you want to say a couple of words, and then we're going to jump into a very powerful and necessary interview. So take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Calvin. I really appreciate your interest, and I agree it is topical. I didn't design it that way, but it just turned out that I was involved in some things that are still issues, and it's still interesting. And the book is it's not really about me. It kind of turns out that way because I'm the narrator, but sometimes I think that I was like Forrest Gump. This is kind of a Forrest Gump story. I was there and I saw things and I wrote it and I remember it. And then that's what I'm communicating to people
Okay.
who read
As
this
I
book.
said to you before we went on air, we met last week to just get to know each other. This really is the makings of a bestseller, not only because it's history, but it's also current events.
Mhm.
What happened then, what's past is prologue. I forgot who said that. It may be written on some Washington, D.C. building. What's past is prologue. And that's what this is. And that's why it's so important. By the way, a funny off-topic thing. Your office and my office have the same color wood, so it looks like we're sitting together. I don't know if you see that, but I see it. It's the funniest thing. The way the picture is, it's like we're in the same room. We're not. Ralph
Mhm.
is. By the way, you must have had some snow down there where you are, eh?
We were snowed in, yes. I spent several days hacking away at the ice, including today.
That's right. You're in Virginia, so
I did not as bad as when my first winter in Ottawa, Canada, we had 14 feet of snow that year
wow, 14 feet
on
of
the
snow.
ground.
Wow, I
Mhm.
can't even imagine. So this is nothing what you had. So, uh, Ralph Milton Buck, the author of An American Diplomat, how it happened. Um, let's start doing our thing. Okay. Um, so what first drew you, by the way, what first drew you to the Foreign Service? I know you graduated from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which had great basketball, thanks to Dean Smith.
Mhm.
Uh, um, uh, and did you understand how dangerous and consequential a life in the Foreign Service could be? So what drew you to this?
Well, it was sort of accidental. I started out in the engineering school at University of Florida, and I wanted to be an electronics engineer, and I'm still interested in electronics. I still build electronic devices myself, but I was not prepared for the mathematics because I hadn't really had a very good background. So I kind of challenged me. And frankly, my roommate had something to do with influencing me. he says, you don't want to spend your life in a laboratory or doing boring things like that. And he said, anyway, he told me about the Foreign Service, even though he wasn't apparently interested. But there was, I know I switched to political science, is what happened. I studied international relations. And naturally, I found about the American diplomatic service. So I had nothing better to do at that time. I applied, and lo and behold, I passed the exam. So
Okay. So, looking
anyway,
back,
to answer the story,
yeah.
the real answer is that they offered me a job and nobody else did, so I took it.
Okay. So that's how you bounced into it. When you started doing it, this Foreign Service stuff, did you have a feeling that this could be where you belong? It could be a career choice. Were you starting to feel comfortable about it?
Well, it is a career choice because they do encourage. Well, there's the Foreign Service. There's several different groups of people that can claim to be in the Foreign Service or doing Foreign Service type work, that is working for the U.S. government abroad. But the core of it is what's called FSOs, Foreign Service officers, and they're they're the heart of diplomatic service, even though we have specialists, for example, diplomatic security officers who are serve with us, but and they're officers too, but they're just a little bit of different category. Anyway, um, it's an up or out service. It's like the military. It's patterned after the U.S. Navy personnel system. So there are several thresholds you go through: the junior officer, the mid-career, and mid-career to senior. But while I was in it, they changed the law so that if you get past into the mid-career section, you're kind of guaranteed a career for about 20 years at least.
In all your academics, between Florida and North Carolina, and some of you must have studied some economics. Did you begin to understand from the stuff you learned in school, what power and instability and human behavior and all these things were about, as this was going to become part of your life? So were you somewhat prepared for this?
Somewhat, yes. I think actually I had pretty good preparation because from University of Florida and North Carolina. As I put in the book, I left North Carolina before I got the master's degree, mainly because I had to take the appointment, but also my faculty advisor wanted me to do the thesis on a topic which I didn't believe in. So I said, the heck with this. Because I didn't understand what he was trying to do. But I actually I did not study at Florida or anywhere else the particular countries. I didn't study anything about Vietnam, for example.
Okay.
I did work on Latin America.
Okay.
Oh, one thing which may point me in that direction. When I was 16 years old, I was selected along with other students to go to Mexico on a summer exchange
Wow.
program.
Wow.
So I lived with a Mexican family. I had 4 Mexican brothers, and I had to speak Spanish the whole time. I was studying Spanish at the time. That was at the University of Veracruz in Jalapa, Mexico.
Okay. Okay.
I put a short description of that in the book.
Yeah. So, well, these are becoming like ingredients to forming you. So now we get into some meaty kind of questions. You entered, government foreign service at the edge, as you write about in here, at the edge of the Tet Offensive. So how did Vietnam permanently change the way you saw American power? How did it change your understanding?
It didn't, frankly, I don't think it really changed my understanding of American power, except that maybe it did illustrate that there were other things that we were doing besides dropping bombs and so on. But I frankly did not agree with the way that we were going about the war in Vietnam. I think it should not have been done that way. So yeah, there's a lot of commentary I can make about it. And
I know. I know, and and because we have so much to cover, we can go back maybe in the future and talk more about it. Because listen, I lived through that. My entire 6 years in college took place from 63 to 69, right smack in the middle of all that. And then I interned for a year as a pharmacist, another year. So it was 7 years I lived through Vietnam with, for me, the specter of having to serve my country in a war. So,
we should not have sent American troops into Vietnamese villages that were defended often by booby traps to have their legs blown off and things like this. This is idiotic. We could have done things quite a lot different.
Yeah, yeah. It took a whole generation, is affected by that.
But I should point out, I was in a very safe, secure part of Vietnam, and that's part of the message in this book. Is some of my experiences and perceptions are entirely different from what most people think about it.
Yeah, because the next question I'm going to ask you, because in what I read, you did some work in a province that transformed itself through education. I know they built millions of classrooms and stuff because I read that. And agriculture, they became, I think, I read, it became one of the most productive rice producing provinces in the world.
Mhm.
So you witnessed, so you witnessed that kind of positivity and accomplishment. Why do you think, Ralph, that that story? Because I never knew that. And by the way, I watched Ken Burns' documentary, The Vietnam War, during the pandemic 3 times. I just sat here. There's nothing else to do. I couldn't do my journalism. So I watched that story because it's about me and my generation. I watched it 3 times for like weeks and weeks. But why do you think this amazing province, which you oversaw, that did all this positivity with education and agriculture, why do you think that story is not really known today?
I don't really have a good answer to that, but the what I would say though is that the province was secure because of the presence and the activity of a Buddhist sect known as the Wahao. And frankly, had it not been for the Wahao, not only in that province, but in surrounding provinces, I think the truth is South Vietnam would have lost the war a lot sooner. The only reason why they stayed in the war as long as they did, because they had this solid base of support, that along with the Catholics, the Northern Catholics that were brought in. And so incidentally, I think I did put this somewhere in the book. There is a video game right now, somebody released, probably some Vietnamese, which is called Operation An Yang. That's the name of the province. And this is a video game that pits the commander of the Hoa army against the North Vietnamese army. So you can choose which side you would take. And it's set in the year 1973. It's so some Vietnamese certainly do know about
By the way, an off-topic question. I could have a ton of these. One of how do you feel? Because I sensed as a kid in college that when the war ends, and one of the things that bothered me about this war and all those lives that were lost and affected with PTSD and everything else, I always felt that when the war is over, 6 months later, McDonald's and Coca-Cola are going to be there, both in the North and South, selling hamburgers and soda. And now Vietnam is one of the top honeymoon destinations here in America. People go to Vietnam. How do you feel about that?
Well, what I'll do is repeat some of the Vietnamese feel about it because there's a book called The Sorrow of War, which is sold on street corners in Vietnam, by the way.
Wow.
And it's banned in Vietnam, but was sold in English translation. It's by a North Vietnamese Army colonel who led the part of the invasion into the South. And he says in the book, they asked him what they liberated. He said, the only thing I liberated was the PX at Tansanut Air Base. He is, and he after his service fighting the war in the South, he goes back to North Vietnam, becomes an alcoholic. His wife is, he breaks up with his wife. His whole life is a mess. He suffers PTSD and so on. Anyway, the book is, it's a powerful book, incidentally.
Uh-huh.
It ranks this book ranks up there with All Quiet on the Western Front.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Powerful. I wrote it down. And if you see me writing, I'm taking notes, by the way, as I'm talking to you, I'm writing stuff down. I'm one of the few interviewers who takes notes while he's interviewing.
Anyway, we had an impact in Vietnam as well as other places in the world. where we were even outside of Anyang, which is pretty safe actually, as long as you were a little bit careful. Um, we introduced things which had a lasting effect economically and otherwise too. And this helped bring Vietnam into the modern world, in my opinion.
That's a really interesting thing you just said. It's so powerful what we did
Mhm.
and the things. So listen, some of the things we did has made obviously and what we've done after the war in 75 to make Vietnam. That's so powerful to make Vietnam one of the most successful economies in the world today. So that's a really positive. That's a really positive statement to American foreign policy and what America did. And I don't think that ever
These
really.
actually know this. And when I first arrived there, was given back in Washington, I was told that one of my first tasks would be to negotiate a debt, renegotiate the debt of Vietnam to the United States, including the debt of South Vietnam that occurred during the war. So I went into the session with the lead Vietnamese negotiator, who was a top official of the foreign ministry. And he looked at me and he said, "We're not going to renegotiate this debt." I said, "Oh, really?" He says, "No, we're going to pay every dime of it."
Wow.
And they did.
Wow.
And he said, now they said that we're not going to pay for military equipment, but any economic assistance in South Vietnam owes the United States for, we're going to pay it. And his exact words were, "We know some people were trying to help."
Wow. Wow. And nobody knows that either. Some of this
Nobody,
stuff. I mean, I never heard it. You know, I'm pretty on top of things. I never. Wow, that is quite amazing.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're leaving Vietnam, and we're gonna fly over you and me to Tehran, um, to Iran. So you were present. I mentioned that you were present during the attack on the U.S. embassy and stuff, and before the hostage crisis. Uh, um, uh, uh, and I alluded to it, but I didn't really talk about it much. But how close were you to even getting killed?
No, I wasn't very close to getting killed, but I was in the very first demonstration against the Shah, which was in Isfahan in 1978. And I was visiting there because I was writing a report on, on the Iranian economy, which is something project given to me by the ambassador. And I was standing outside near a hotel, and a mob came running down the street, occupying the whole street. So I just joined the mob and ran along beside some other guys.
Wow,
And I had a beard and I had a little hat pulled down on my head. I think they could tell I was a foreigner, but they didn't mind me or anything.
wow,
And so we stopped in front of a hotel and started throwing Molotov cocktails through the windows and set the place on fire. I retreated to a shopkeeper's place, and the guy saw I was a foreigner, and owner brought me inside. And then finally, the mob disappeared suddenly as it had appeared, and there was nothing there but an eerie silence and the hotel going up in flames. That was the first big demonstration against the Shah. Then I came back to the embassy, and
okay.
then things clearly were starting to unravel. So I started calling all my business contacts and finding out from them what was going on, because everything was on strike. It mushroomed. It just grew and grew and grew. The rest is history. But
Yeah, the rest is history.
but
Um,
then what happened was the Shah finally wind up leaving the country, and we had a replacement. We had the new government come in, and I did not know at the time, but in reality, our political section was in contact with these people. and had been for a year.
Wow.
And in fact, the deputy head of the political section wrote a book on this subject, so you can consult his book. It's entitled "Inside the Iranian Revolution." But what happened was Ayatollah Khomeini came back. He took over, and we thought everything might work out because we actually did have some communication with the Khomeini government. But suddenly, on February 14th, 1979, an armed group assaulted and attacked the embassy. And we're talking gunfire here. They didn't just walk in. No, they riddled the place. No American was hit. People were on the floor. But they did manage to get the steel shutters open and came into the embassy. The ambassador ordered everyone to surrender, or we went first into the vault. Now, actually, I wasn't there because I was having lunch downtown. And there were the political section people also weren't there. The embassy wasn't really open at that time. We were concentrating on getting the Americans out. Had been evacuating Americans and arranging evacuation flights the past couple of months, get the whole American population out of Iran. But and dependents had been sent home, and some of our household effects had been crated up and shipped out. But in any event, the embassy was captured, and everyone was stood up against the wall, and they didn't know what was going to happen.
Were you stood up against the wall too?
No, I was not.
Okay.
I was having lunch with a Christian missionary who called me about it, asking what should he do, and I said, well, okay, you can have lunch with me, and I'll tell you what I know, what's going on. Actually, I attended his church because there were Christian churches in that time.
Yeah. Hey, there were Christian churches, there were Jewish temples. I mean, the society there was a really, that leads me to my next off-topic question. You were there. My impression and everything I've spoken to, because I have parenthetical relatives who lived there in the 70s, and it was a really nice place to live.
It was, yes. I had a good time there.
Yeah, everything was good. And now, they're riding the reverse way to get rid of that regime because the economy there is terrible.
Well, the truth is the majority of that's even when I was there, a majority of the Iranian urban population, at least, was actually not anti-American at all. Tended to be rather pro-American, frankly. In any event, these people who attacked us, I did not know who they were at the time. I've done some research, and I believe they were a Marxist terrorist organization trained by Soviet intelligence for the express purpose of attacking and overcoming the American embassy. And now, let me digress a little bit here. I submitted my book to the State Department for clearance, and they did clear everything that's in it.
So this was cleared by the State Department?
Cleared by the State Department, yes.
That's great.
However, there are things that the U.S. government still has not acknowledged, and you can read about this on the internet. That's all I can say about it.
That's fine. I'm not. That's not my job to.
But I do say this: the Soviets had some issues, things that we were doing. So that's about as much as far as I could go.
That's fine.
I don't know whether this is still classified or not.
That's fine. It's fine. Oh, well, we do know that right around this time, they went into Afghanistan. And I actually watched a thing last night about the Olympic hockey team. It was on Netflix, and it was wonderful about the 1980 American hockey team that beat the Russians. And it was one of the most wonderful things. And then shortly thereafter, President Carter said, we're not going to go to the 1980 Moscow Olympics because they are in Afghanistan. So all that was all percolating. Uh, um,
I, as I say in the book, part of the reasons for taking the hostages later on, there was the first attack. They took control of the embassy. We never had complete control of the embassy after that. We had the Marines were not armed. We shouldn't have tolerated a situation like that. But we thought that we could evidently improve our relations with the Khomeini government, and that was a big mistake. But well, anyway, do you want to know what I think Carter should have done?
uh, if you want to say it, go ahead and say it.
Well, there's only one thing that would have worked,
What's
and
that?
that is, he should have gotten on his Air Force One airplane, gone airborne, and when I went airborne, contacted the Khomeini government and told them he was making a state visit to Iran.
Wow.
And he should have flown Air Force One directly to Tehran and landed at Tehran. And then told Ayatollah Khomeini, I'm meeting you at the airport. I want to talk man to man with you. And I'm a man of God and you're a man of God. And we're going to pray together.
Wow.
And eventually he would have met him at the airport if Khomeini is willing to show up, and I think he could have done it. He should have made a speech directly to the Iranian people and told them that he's not bringing the Shah back. He respects whatever Iran is doing on this. And then he was said, I'm going to the American embassy and I'm getting my people. And could he have done this? I think he could have. Yeah.
Powerful.
But it would take a lot more guts than frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. I would have never even dreamt of that. Who knew, and they tried doing it, by landing those, helicopters and stuff. And I mean, that didn't.
At the time that happened, I was glad that they had failed because, frankly, if those helicopters had gone into the embassy, they would have killed everybody.
They would have killed everybody. Yep. Yep. And so I thought that too. I thought that it just was doomed. It just wouldn't have worked. So, I gotta take a breath. I gotta take I'm gonna go off topic now. It's time for us to take a deep breath. And I always like asking a couple of off-topic questions, and I'm going to confess to you, journalistically, that these questions came from Barbara Walters, one of my favorite journalists. So here goes.
Okay.
Here goes, Ralph. And then we'll get back to business. So, excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Who would I like to spend a day with?
Yes.
Donald Trump.
Okay. That's great. Great answer. I actually met him twice.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I crashed a party. Long story. A long time ago, I crashed a party. He had just gotten divorced from Ivana, and it was in the city, and my sister and I. It's a long story, but it was a big party for celebrities and stuff, and I was like Forrest Gump, like you said. And and then there was a picture the Daily News took of Donald and Ivana. They were split, and I went around and I photobombed that picture. So there's Donald, Ivana, and Calvin. And I've been looking now for years to try to find that picture. I can't find it. So be it. Great answer. No matter how and I'm not a political person, but no matter how you siphon it and shake it and stir it. It's an interesting personality and fascinating journey and fascinating man. All right, moving on. The next little off-topic question. Do you have any favorite movies?
the I've also been asked that, and the movie that I rate most highly was one I saw when I was about maybe 9 or 10 years old. It's called Forbidden Planet, and it was the first color science fiction film made back in the 1950s.
I love it. By the way, I love that movie.
Mhm.
And I love that movie. I love it because that has relevance today. It
Mhm.
has a lot of relevance today. I could write an essay on that. Why? Because the Krell,
Yeah.
they inhabited that planet, the Forbidden Planet, the Krell, and they, boy, does this have relevance. The more I'm talking to you, the more, well, because the Krell were so brilliant and
Mhm.
they did all this stuff and then they vanished. And their brilliance came from what? And what do we have today? AI all over the place. So there really is, and I'll also talk about the id. And I watch a movie all the time. And it's so funny you said that. This is unrehearsed, you know. The everybody has an id, and this id didn't want these, these space guys from the United States there. So the id was finding ways to get rid of them, and that was Dr. Morbius. See, I remember
Mhm.
all the names, Walter Pigeon. Man, I remember all of that. Leslie Nielsen, just a marvelous, marvelous movie that
Scared the
that
hell out of me at the time when I saw it. By the way.
and guess what? It still scares the hell out of me because, like I said, the whole AI and the knowledge of the Krell, it's us today. It's funny you said that. That's a great answer. All right, back to work. Back to work. Um, let's talk about diplomacy versus politics. You described pressure from Washington uh, to reverse. You got pressure to reverse accurate, intelligent intelligence assessments. Um, is that bothersome? Is that worrisome that sometimes that comes up?
Well, sure. We were asked to prepare a national intelligence estimate, an NIE, which is a very formal thing. And I was designated the State Department um, analyst who would write the do the and do the analysis and write the report from the point of view of the State Department. Anyway, CIA took the position that a North Vietnamese offensive, we're talking about after 1973. We're talking about 1974. As a matter of fact, we were writing this. And CIA took the position that there would not be a big North Vietnamese offensive at that time. And if there was one, that South Vietnamese would able to contain it. I knew that was nonsense. And so did the Defense Department. So state and defense were going to take a contrary position. Um, anyway, I was called into the office of the Director of Intelligence of the State Department and told that um, what he said, where'd you get all this information? So I told him, what was happening, and I went down to my office, got about 20 or 30 choice reports, brought them back to him, and showed him. He didn't even look at them. He said, "We're changing our position on this." He took a red pencil and marked through everything I wrote, and so anyway, I had to he basically joined. I was instructed to join the CIA position. Now this order came directly from Henry Kissinger, so
Oh,
that's what it was all about. And so
wow.
but I was embarrassed. I thought I was going to go back over to CIA and they're going to laugh at me. I told them what had happened. It was dead silence, and then someone spoke up and said, Ralph, there's not a single person in this entire office that has not had that same experience before.
Business. Hey, whatever. It's business, and that's that. Um, a segue to the next question. In your experience, because you got a ton of experience in here, who really holds the power, or maybe it's a combination, You got diplomats, you got politicians, you got intelligence agencies, which you just mentioned, or economic forces, or is it a combination of all these that create power?
Well, frankly, what I used to think is being sort of challenged by current events. The power structure in this country with respect to foreign affairs seems to be changing somehow. In the past, I would have said that power was wielded by influential members of the Senate and by business organizations such as Council of Foreign, supported by business, so Council of Foreign Relations, and other people who had experience and background in foreign affairs and um, and so on. I mean, what we've been led to believe. More recently, though, the things have been upended. So I'm not sure who really. Ultimately, the people have the power. But,
You're right, exactly. The people have the power, they have the power to vote. But it just again, I never talk politics. That's not my thing.
by the way,
Um,
foreign service officers don't really make foreign policy. We execute it, we carry it out.
you carry it out. I knew I kind of figured that you carry it out, you implement it, and it comes from up there. All right, moving along. You've dealt with hyperinflation in Bolivia, Brazil, and I couldn't believe what I read. 2,400% increase. I
24,000.
can't 24,000.
Mhm.
Oh, I mean, I can't even imagine that. Uh, uh, um, um, and it's in my notes. Americans can't imagine that. Um, in your opinion, what does such economic collapse do to those people's psyche? And you've seen it.
I don't know what it does to their psyche, but we encountered people who were starving, as I pointed out in the book. And however, one thing I should mention in the case of Bolivia, they had there was a fallback position, and that was the US dollar. So, like if you went down to Santa Cruz, which is lower altitude in eastern part of Bolivia, they only use the dollar. Everything in the store was marked in US dollars, and that was the only currency that was accepted. Even back in La Paz, when we sold our automobile, I sell it for US dollars. Um, don't deal in the local currency at all.
Okay. Um,
So now, if you didn't have the US dollar, then there would be an issue, more of an issue, more of a problem. But even in at the beginning of the hyperinflation in Bolivia, um, there were many shortages. People couldn't get fresh milk. They couldn't get eggs. Stores were closed. People weren't working, and it was very, very tough, difficult, very tough.
mm,
Um, Gradually, it loosened up. But the thing is, the government at that time implemented an incredibly radical program, which I describe in the book. And there was a famous economist, Jeffrey Sachs, who came down from Harvard. And I met with him many times. And also with the Victor Paz Estenssoro, who was um, I'm sorry, I got the name wrong. Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada was his name, known as Goni. Um, he was the architect along with the finance minister of this program. And I'm not saying I would advocate something like that, but that was the most radical stabilization program I've ever heard of
huh,
anywhere. And
okay.
it did work.
Okay.
In
Um,
fact, Sachs says it nailed inflation in 10 days. I don't know if that's really true, but pretty close to it.
wow.
Sachs was not the originator of the program, but he did support it. By the way, Sachs has a book on foreign policy,
Uh-huh.
and I
Okay.
have not read it. I've looked at it, but um, and he takes a position which I don't really disagree with, but I don't think that he tells the whole story. So my book what my book focuses on is what actually happened in the past, and he's talking about what we should be doing in the future. So I,
Future. And you dealt with the past. Well, once again, I bring up past as prologue.
mm,
I have to look that up later to see who said that. I'll let you know.
okay.
I'll let you know. It's somewhere I read it. All right, moving along. Uh, Trying to squeeze stuff in here. This could go on for 10 hours. Gosh, could I talk to you and talk to you? Because all this stuff just fascinates me. And I'm completely apolitical, so completely. And I focus more, my life is more, on doing things for people and teaching and taught at Rutgers and I'm a big climate guy and environmentalist and I worry about a million different things and I formed a global group. But this is just fascinating because I lived it. So Ralph, you observed the rise of Manuel Noriega,
Mhm.
uh, and it was a critical time when the United States chose not to really intervene electorally and stuff. Why do you think we didn't? Um,
Oh,
uh,
I know why. What happened was Noriega was head of intelligence in the Panamanian Defense Forces, and after the death of Omar Torrijos, he just sort of gradually grew in influence and through. Uh, well, I guess everybody else, the defense forces was afraid of him. Um, and as I mentioned in the book, there was a delegation of CIA analysts who came down and they specifically warned against supporting Noriega. They said he was a disaster. Of course, they had reasons for saying so. Um, there was an election in 1984. The opponent of the government, Arnulfo Arias, actually won the election. We were monitoring the polling places. We knew exactly
wow,
the vote, down to the last vote in the whole country. We
wow,
knew that Arias won the election. I was really angry and upset that we didn't do anything about it. And the ambassador, however, said, in effect, told us that he had been instructed by Washington not to get involved. We could have brought down Noriega right at that point, simply by coming out and saying, demanding that the votes be counted accurately and honestly. And so we didn't do it. The answer why? The answer is that because the Defense Department didn't want to do anything to upset the relationship with the Panamanian Defense Forces because they wanted to use Panama and all the facilities we had in Panama to support the war effort in Central America.
hmm,
It was incredibly short-sighted thinking.
really?
Mhm.
Oof. Um, uh, if
Because
you,
eventually we had to use military force to unseat Noriega and take
yeah,
him prisoner and sent him to prison in the United States. He also served time in France, and then he was extradited back to Panama, and he died in prison in Panama.
all right,
You know, we could avoid it all, but with
yeah,
with been
yeah.
willing to do so.
Uh, and you kind of just answered my next question. Okay, now in a happier note. I guess it's a happier note. You go back to Vietnam. How did it feel going back to Vietnam all this time later? And you go back to Vietnam as a diplomat, rebuilding relationships. How did that feel after everything that you went through?
Well, I was glad to have that opportunity. I admit that I kind of sought that position. Actually, I had been assigned the ambassador to a Latin American country. Had asked that I uh, join him at the embassy, and I had been assigned to be the economic counselor of that country. Um, and but I found out that we had opened up our embassy in Hanoi, and the position of head of the economic and political section was open, and I asked if I could go there, and they didn't really, they had already got a candidate for that job and were about to put him in there. Frankly, the only reason I got the job was I had the language and I could get there sooner.
Okay.
And I proved
Um,
it by taking a test in Vietnamese, and I got the required rating, and they couldn't make up any excuse for not sending me there.
okay. Um, why do you think we've kind of touched on this? What are some of the ingredients that made Vietnam's economic transformation so amazing when others fail? What was that ingredient? Is it the people and their willpower and determination?
Um, well, Vietnam has a very productive and willing labor force, and they are used to running small businesses. Uh, this was true in South Vietnam. I don't know, in North Vietnam is a little bit different, but they have state farms and state industries in North Vietnam, but they never really went too far in that direction. Ho Chi Minh wasn't an extreme radical in that respect.
Yeah, yeah.
But they saw, in fact, we told them, we can we can make your country if you do what we
Right.
suggest. The ambassador told them that,
Wow.
and
And we did,
we did. Yeah.
and we did,
Mhm.
and we did. And I don't think enough of that. I don't think, the man on the street really knows that that what we're talking about, and which leads me into my next question. We have amazing powers here in America for reconciliation between former enemies. It's a quiet strength of America, and I marvel. And I'm a little bit of a student of World War II, but I absolutely that was a brutal war, in the war in the Pacific, brutal enemies and hatred and all this stuff. And I marvel that 2 months, and maybe I'm kind of washing this over, but 2 months after that war ended, that brutal, horrible war with an atomic bomb, we're best friends with Japan and we're building them up to
Tell
make
a
them.
story of that. There's a book entitled 1945, and in it recounts the story of the first Americans to go into Japan after the ceasefire. The first Americans to go in flew in a B-25 bomber. They landed at the airfield and taxied to a stop, and then there was nobody there. And then said, "Where is everybody?" Finally, a Japanese officer came running up to them and said, "Oh, you guys at the wrong end of the runway. The banquet is down at the other end." So they turned around the aircraft, taxied back down to the other end, and there was a whole group of Japanese officers with every little bit of wine and food they could get together, and they were throwing a banquet in honor of the Americans.
Wow. So,
And it went
well,
on from there. I mean, basically they said, um, they didn't quite say we're glad you're here, but you know, nobody felt that the United States was going to do something terrible to Japan. We didn't. In fact, we built the country. We rebuilt.
we built them back up, of course, to make them, to make them one of the most powerful global economies in history, and
Not only
everything.
that, I put it a sidelight in the book, the whole story of Deming. Do you know the story of Deming?
No, no.
Well, he didn't quite invent it, but it was invented in Bell Telephone Laboratories. But he came up with a system known as statistical process controls and quality groups and so on. He tried to sell this to Detroit, and they wouldn't have anything to do with it. Felt they didn't need it. So after World War II, he went to Japan, and he told the Japanese leaders of industry, "I can show you how to conquer the world." and your how you can make your industry the most competitive in the entire world, and you'll recover everything that you lost and much more besides. And they took him seriously. Anyway, he did it, and the highest prize, the highest honor that can be awarded in Japan is the Deming Prize, which is which is which is awarded by the emperor personally, on live, and it's put on live television throughout Japan when it's held. Um, it's one of the most prestigious awards in the world, and not only were the Japanese thankful for this, but they sent a delegation every year to visit Deming in his home, and they were especially um, impressed by him because he never asked a single dime in payment. Sorry, the phone's ringing.
That's fine. Hey, this is an informal, those things happen. Oh, it's
So
fascinating.
that's an example of the transfer of technology that made a huge difference. And of course, eventually, Detroit did use the Deming system. I've been in plants, including auto plants, in which obviously they were using statistical process controls. I don't know if you know how they do that, but the workers have to be trained in how to make statistical measurements. And each machine, each workstation has a normal curve which shows the deviance from or the actual measurements of the deviance from the perfect output. And they monitor that the workers have to be trained how to do this. Then they have meetings in which they decide how they can reduce the statistical variance. This is, of course, every major multinational factory in the world is doing this today, but
Wow.
Deming was the guy who invented it.
Wow. I wrote that down. I gotta read up on him. That's fascinating stuff. Couple more questions. Like I said, I could stay here hours with you. I have to control myself. So you were in England during 9/11, and you witnessed from that something called global solidarity. Um, this amazing global solidarity after 9/11. Did that change your picture of America's place in the world?
It changed it, reinforced my view,
Reinforced it. Okay.
because what it was surprising, I was invited to come visit my friend who I knew from Canada. His name is Jeffrey. Anyway, it was dean of the business school at Manchester University, and we had arrived in London the same day of 9/11, that the towers were hit. Well, anyway, I called him up and I said, should we still come or what? He says, yeah, so please come. So we arrived in the afternoon, and he said that he had a little ceremony he had to attend, and it had something to do with the attack on the United States. He didn't exactly invite me, but I said, well, do you want us to come with you? He said, oh, yes, it'd be very nice if you could come. So we went to the Manchester Cathedral, and this was an afternoon on a weekday. The place was completely jammed. There was hardly any space left. And as we walked in, the whole group started to sing. And they sang with absolutely the loudest they could sing. And tears were streaming down the face of my friend. And they were singing the Star Spangled Banner.
Wow. Wow.
The Star Spangled Banner commemorates a war of the United States against England.
Yes. And they were singing it. Wow.
Yeah.
I just watched I just watched on PBS a month or two ago, The American Revolution. It was a multi-part series. I loved it. And learned so much about so much stuff. George Washington, Benedict Arnold, he's got a bad rep, but for a long time he was a great leader and a great general. But the whole thing, it's a great
Another
thing to
story
watch.
I read recently, the New York Times reporter who covered the Cuban Missile Crisis in Moscow in 1962.
Wow.
And he attended he was present at a demonstration, obviously been organized by the Soviet government, and a bunch of kids were there. One of them took a ink bottle and threw it through the window of the American Cultural Center, whatever it was. But then the kid sees that the person observing him is an American, and he runs up to the American reporter and he says, "Have you ever ridden in a Chevrolet automobile?" And the man says, who's writing this, telling the story, he says, "Well, yeah." He says, "In fact, I own a Chevrolet." And the kid says, "Wow." And he calls to all his other friends. He says, "Hey, this guy owns a Chevrolet." And they've been asking, they had seen some film which people were driving around in American cars. And this was so fascinating to people.
Huh.
And my wife told me, and my wife is Vietnamese, I met her in the United States. But anyway, she told me that before she went to the United States, she believed that everything was push button. You just push a button in your house and all these marvelous things happen. I'm telling you, the rest of the world, what they knew about the United States mostly came from movies and television shows. Because when I was in Vietnam, the television ran all the American TV shows.
Wow.
And so this is what America was kind of a, what would you say? It was kind of a dream for many people all over the world.
Wow. That media perpetuated, you know.
Some of the movies that we had are, I don't think they're exactly put our best foot forward. And I'm
Yeah,
sure that many people thought we were absolutely, totally crazy.
yeah, yep, yep.
But the image that America had of the world has been one that has been very positive, actually. Um, and I hope that continues that way.
Yeah. Which is um, um, a good question for me to ask. You write that the next chapter of world history hasn't been written yet. Uh,
There's
uh,
more to
does,
go.
yeah, does anything worry you right now? Huh, loaded question.
Well, yes, because our prestige is declining at the present time. And I'm not sure exactly what we should do about it, but um, many people are coming to the conclusion that we're going to become just a run-of-the-mill country like other countries. And in the past, that's not been true. We were special.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff to say about that. I don't say stuff about that. I live each day. I live each day. The last question to ask you, you've been you've done it 33 years in 8 countries, 2 wars, and countless crises. How did it change your life?
Well, I guess it became my life. It didn't change it. Now, there are downsides to being in the Foreign Service, just as there are being in the military. And the downside is you give up opportunity to develop a life at home and whatever, you know. So when you retire from the Foreign Service, you come back and you may have interesting things to do. You may have some other occupation you could engage in. You could teach at university. You could open a business, whatever. But you've lost about 30 or 40 years uh, that you could have used building your own nest, you might say, in
Yeah,
your hometown.
yeah. But you know, what you've done is here, and Ralph, I can't tell you how grateful I am for you spending this time with me. And it's here. And I said I don't read a lot, but I'm going to finish this because it's amazing. Your journey is amazing. This should be standard reading for so many people because it's
Incidentally,
illuminating.
let me put a plug in for there's a I, in fact there's a website of interviews with American diplomats. It's called the Association for Diplomatic Studies and Training. Of course, my interview is there, but this is over 3,000 interviews. It's an incredible uh, historical resource that most people,
Association of Diplomatic Training, is that it?
ADST, Association for Diplomatic Studies and Training.
Studies and Training.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to check it out. You are, I use this word very reservedly. You are a gift. What you've given us is a gift. These insights and your devotion and your 33 years, you are a gift, and I'm just so thrilled to just get a glimpse of this stuff because I love it. I love the history and I love the journey. And there's so much positivity here. You know, everybody can say this, and this, but you know, there's so much positivity in the stuff that we've discussed. You know, real positivity, and it's the diplomatic corps. People can have ideas of it, but my goodness, just look at Japan, look at Vietnam, and the resurgence and all this stuff. So there's a lot of really good stuff in diplomatic service and productive stuff and positive stuff. So I'm I'm actually inviting you to come back. We can come back at some point in time and talk more about this. As I plunge into this, I'll come up with more questions. We can talk about it, and I only wish you good things. And the fact that you've come forward and told this story, illuminated, because it's illumination. It's wonderful stuff. It's better than history because it's real.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. And one of the reasons for writing the book is not just to tell a funny story or not just to extol whatever it is that I did. And I don't claim to have done fantastic things, but it's to acquaint people with the, shall we say, the more positive side of our role in the world. And
Yeah,
I really do think that I really do think that we helped put the world on a better track
yeah,
in the latter part of the 20th century, the first part of the
yeah.
21st century. And had we not done so, I think it would be a very different world. And I don't think it would be nearly as good a one as it
Yeah,
is.
and I agree. And part of that illuminations came from here and never realizing until I read it and saw it in black and white words that,
The book recounts a good many setbacks, a good many reverses too.
of course, but there's so
Uh,
much positivity, coming out of the stuff we've done. And I don't think we get enough credit for it. Actually, people always throwing stones and rocks and stuff. But if you look at the positivity of things, so it's always a balance. But anyway, I'm going to stop recording.
okay.
You come back, don't leave. We're going to do a little 2-minute wrap. Thank you again. I keep showing this book because I want people to read it and learn. Thank you, Ralph, so much.
Thank you, Calvin, for the opportunity to talk
Thank
with
you.
you.